In social psychology, psychologists strive to understand individual behavior in a social context. Implemented in experiments are ways of analyzing human behavior when influenced by other people, and the traits that are exhibited based off of this influence. One modern social psychological experiment done by Philip Zimbardo would go down in history with breakthroughs in regards to power, manipulation, and control in a social setting. When Professor Philip Zimbardo of Stanford University decided he wanted to test the psychological effects of prison life, an ad was put out in the local paper calling for volunteers. Over 70 applicants answered the ad. The applicants were then given diagnostic interviews and personality tests to eliminate candidates with psychological problems, medical disabilities, or a history of crime or drug abuse. Ultimately, Zimbardo and his colleagues were left with a sample of 24 college students from the US and Canada who happened to be in the Stanford area. According to Zimbardo, the next step was building the prison and creating the environment. Zimbardo's team called upon the services of experienced consultants, one of them being a former prisoner who had served nearly 17 years behind bars. This consultant made them aware of what it was actually like to be a prisoner, and also introduced Zimbardo to a number of other ex-convicts and correctional personnel. The prison was constructed by boarding up each end of a corridor in the basement of Stanford's psychology department building. That corridor was the yard, and was the only place outside where prisoners were allowed to walk, eat, or exercise, except to go out to the bathroom down the hallway, which prisoners did blindfolded so as not to know the way out of the prison. Once the prison was ready, the men were split in half randomly, with half being assigned as guards and half being assigned the roles of prisoners. After arriving to the prisoners were issued a uniform. Meaning to degrade the prisoners, the main part of this uniform was a dress or smock, with each prisoner wore at all times with no underclothes. On the smock, in front and in back, was his prison ID number. On each prisoner's right ankle was a heavy chain, bolted on and worn at all times. Rubber sandals were the footwear, and each prisoner covered his hair with a cap made from a woman's nylon stocking. The guards, in contrast, were adorned in uniform, in dark aviators, so as to hide their identity and expression. The guards were given no specific training on how to be guards. Instead, they were free to do whatever they thought was necessary to maintain law and order within the prison. The guards were under the supervision of Warden David Jaffe, an undergraduate from Stanford University. Zimbardo's team began with 9 guards and 9 prisoners in the prison, with 3 guards working each of the 3 8-hour shifts, while 3 prisoners occupied each of the 3 cells around the clock. The remaining guards and prisoners from the sample of 24 were on call in case they were needed. At 2:30 a.m., the prisoners were awakened from sleep by whistles for their count. The count served the purpose of familiarizing the prisoners with their numbers. Counts took place several times each shift and often at night. More importantly, these counts provided a time for the guards to exercise control over the prisoners. At first, the prisoners were not completely into their roles and did not take the counts too seriously. The guards, too, were feeling out of their new roles and were not yet sure how to assert authority over their prisoners. This quickly changed as each roll call and hour passed, with one guard even gaining the nickname John Wayne for his rough and Wild West-like mentality. On only the second day of the experiment, the prisoners launched a rebellion. They ripped off their ID numbers and barricaded themselves in their cells using their cots. The guards retaliated by spraying the prisoners with fire extinguishers, removing beds from the cells, and stripping the prisoners naked. The leaders of the rebellion were placed in solitary confinement and punished, while those who didn't participate were rewarded. The harsh physical force and mental abuse by the guards soon began to take its toll on the prisoners. Only 36 hours into the experiment, prisoner 8612 began constantly and uncontrollably crying, had outbursts of rage, and could no longer formulate cohesive thoughts. 8612 was interviewed by Zimbardo's consultants and then given the offer of becoming an informant in exchange for no further guard harassment. During the next count, prisoner 8612 told other prisoners, "You can't leave, you can't quit." That heightened the prisoner's sense of really being in prison, and after more outbursts, 8612 was released. He was not the only prisoner released prematurely. With prisoner 416 staging a hunger strike for his own release, one prisoner developing a psychosomatic rash over his entire body, and prisoner 819 breaking down on the 4th day when talking to the Catholic priest that Zimbardo invited to the prison. The priest's visit further blurred the line between an experiment and reality. On the 5th day, Zimbardo held mock parole hearings with a parole board headed by their ex-convict consultant. It appeared all of the prisoners no longer perceived their imprisonment as an experiment. Even the ex-convict consultant felt his own lines being crossed, becoming the most hated authority official imaginable, similar to his own who had rejected his annual parole request for 16 years when he was a prisoner. At this point, it became clear to the psychology team that they had to end the study. It had become a situation in which prisoners were withdrawing and behaving in pathological ways, in which some of the guards were behaving sadistically, and the lines of reality were very blurred.